Chapter 7, Broken Pieces. I'm sorry. My mouth just dropped open. I was like, oh! I was halfway through, oh! Morgan's got another new top, and it's a lovely color. And then I was looking over at this outfit, and I'm like, huh, I didn't picture Quill for, like, wearing this outfit. And then my eyes panned up even further, and I'm like, that's not Quill. Who am I looking at? And then recognition. I'm like, oh, Rory, you look quite a bit different. Holy crap. I love the bangs. Not sure about the sweater shirt thing, but you know what? If you're comfy, that's all that matters. Good to see you, sweetie.
Are you sure it's okay for me to be here?
Of course it is. And isn't it more comfortable to talk here while the others are discussing business at Vale's place? I motioned Rory to the sofa. It had been a few days since Eretz and the others had dragged him out of that alley, and his recovery had tracked similarly to mine so far. He was still wary of Vale, and though they were coexisting, as Vale put it, Rory had been reluctant to open up to them. Vale thought he was ready to talk, though, that he wanted to, just not to them. He had asked about me, so they assumed he might be more willing to talk to me. Well, Rory, we've been here before with you. I wasn't sure if that would be true, but I wanted to try talking to him, if he was willing to talk. I glanced back at the hesitant man standing near the door, still clasping his hands in front of his body. He looked better in clean clothes and with a new haircut, courtesy of Vale. Nice job, Vale. The gauntness hadn't faded, but the dark smudges under his eyes had. He still had the air of someone being hunted, something I could sympathize with. Rory? You okay?
Are you not afraid of me?
I paused, and after a beat, returned to him to pull him into the kitchen and nudge him to the sofa. No, I'm not.
But last time...
Rory, I admit I'm curious about that day and what was going on. We all are, for a lot of reasons. But I'm not afraid of you. I didn't tell him I'd been practicing with my Psy enough. I was a little more confident about handling it if he tried to grab me or drag me around this time. But it had become clear Rory was not the same as he had been back when I first met him. Whatever had been going on at the time, he seemed normal now. Well, not normal exactly. He was severely traumatized. But he was in touch with reality and was aware of his surroundings in a way I don't think he had been before. So now it was about finding out what had changed. Rory finally edged toward the sofa on his own and, with my encouragement, sat down. He held himself rigid, hands clenched tight in his lap.
Is that why you brought me here? To talk about that day?
Yes. And no, you don't have to talk about anything if you don't want to. But I suppose I thought you might want to? I won't lie to you. There are reasons we'd all like to understand what you went through and how you ended up here. But it's your choice if you want to tell us.
You need to know about the lab.
The lab. So something like that did happen. We are hoping you can tell us about it, yes. Particularly what happened there and who was responsible, and I was hoping to find out if I'm being tracked. I'm sorry, it must be difficult to talk about.
No, I understand. I understand why you need to know.
He passed a hand over his face, holding his lanky form into a ball as he drew his knees to his chest and wrapped his arms around them. I didn't think Rory was younger than me. If so, it was only by a few years. But he seemed so very young and fragile right then. It broke my heart to see him, to see anyone like that. I just really wanted to help him. In a way, maybe it was because I had experienced the grace and help of others since my arrival. I wanted to pay it forward and share it with someone else who needed it. Especially when he seemed to need far more than I had. I had gone through a lot, but Rory... appeared to have gone through much worse. If I hadn't been extremely lucky, I might have experienced something similar. And there were probably so many others that had. I couldn't comfort or help all of them, but Rory was here, now. At the very least, I could try to help him through whatever terrible memories haunted him. If he would let me. If he wanted that.
You wondered if you're being tracked. If that's because I followed you here, I think.
He looked away from me, eyes darting around the flat before he looked my way again.
I don't think it's something others can do. I don't think anyone else can find you the way I did.
Okay. That would be ideal, but then how did you follow me?
At the lab, they said it was an abnormal skill. An abnormal rook ability.
Abnormal ability? So you're F-class like me.
I am. Yes, but I was never a rook before. Not when I was still a New Albion. I was just a mid-level infantry.
His classification changed? Was that perhaps the effect the Arensal had on him? What kind of unique ability did you develop?
I can hear footsteps.
Footsteps. Leaving some footprints behind for someone else to follow. Okay. Interesting.
I know that sounds strange. I'm not sure how else to explain it. It's like hearing the path you followed. It's not hearing exactly, but it also somewhat is. They said it was a psychometric ability that manifested within my enhanced hearing, and vision sometimes. Other psychometry is inconsistent because those echoes can be difficult to find. But if I've met someone or had close contact, then this ability never fails. I can always track them at least some distance. That's what they said at the lab. It's why they were interested in this. So that's why I think the others can't track you like I can.
Interesting. We've never learned that before. I guess my question is, why don't you follow her? Well, I guess for Endgame you can't, but I wonder why in other situations, like Lance, you didn't show up. It's interesting. A tracking sort of ability that someone found useful. It made sense that they were experimenting with Esper abilities, that they were trying to create ones that were useful. Still, to be reduced to a utilitarian function like that.
I didn't mean to follow you here, but I didn't know what else to do.
He swallowed nervously, gripping his arms tight as he squeezed his eyes shut. I'm not upset at you for being here. I had some unpleasant people following me that day. I was worried about them, not you.
I'm glad. I just didn't want to be alone again. After the building collapsed the last day I saw you, I think I died. I mean, I think my heart stopped and I blacked out. Or died. But maybe if the Forex system still has activity, biokinetic regeneration is still possible. I don't know how it works. I was injured and then I thought I died. But after that, I woke up and my injuries were healing.
Sheesh, man. I'm so sorry, Rory. I was the one who destroyed that place. I didn't mean to. I just panicked when I was attacked.
It wasn't your fault. It wasn't your fault. I'm glad you got away. You don't have to apologize. I think it wouldn't have been bad if I...
He stopped himself and shook his head slightly. Without thinking, I covered one of his hands with mine. I'm glad you got out, Rory. I'm glad I could see you again and know that you're safe. I'm glad you made it here. His eyes went wide, then he was scrubbing at them with the back of his hand, shoulders shaking. I drew him into a hug before I could stop myself, and he curled into me, heavy sobs tearing through his body. Rory! It's okay, baby. Tears stung my eyes in return. We'd been through such different things that what I'd endured couldn't compare to what he'd endured. But I still felt a connection to the raw pain ripping itself out of him. It had hurt so much to lose the things I'd lost, and Rory had lost so much more. I couldn't begin to imagine what it was like. I could only hold him and rub his back while he cried. So that is what I did for a long time, while assuring him it was okay, and he was safe, and we would do everything we could to help. When he finally pulled away, abashed and rubbing the blotchy redness around his eyes, I got up to find something for him to wipe his face with. I opted for a dampened kitchen towel, which I handed to him when I returned to the sofa.
I'm sorry.
There's no need to apologize for anything, especially not for crying. It's okay to cry. It's okay to grieve for the things you've been through. And it's okay to survive. Sometimes I think we all need to hear that. He gave me a hesitant, watery smile in return, then swallowed hard and looked down again. It was several more minutes before he spoke again.
After what happened, I was quite confused for a while. I didn't know where I was, and my memories were jumbled up. All I could hear were your footsteps, so I followed them on instinct. I don't think I was following you consciously, just the steps I could hear. It was like my only anchor. I'm sorry.
I keep telling you that you don't have to apologize. Actually, it's a relief to know it was something like that. It gives me more confidence no one else will follow me here the same way. After a moment of silence between us, I stood and gave him what I hoped was a reassuring smile. How about some tea? Or something else? Rory nodded faintly.
I've never told anyone else about the lab. I never had anyone to tell. And after I left that place, it was like I was living in a fog for so long. I kept hearing so many footsteps,
I glanced back at him when he trailed off. He was staring out at the city, not moving from his spot on the sofa. The look on his face was so desolate, so lost, like someone so broken they didn't know where to begin picking up the pieces.
We were visiting Pythia, my partner and I, an anniversary trip. Avery always wanted to visit Pythia. They enjoy traveling. There was no warning before we were ambushed. I guess we were being followed for a while. Those people knew I was an Esper. I'm not sure how. They had weapons, so maybe they assumed we'd fight back. I tried, but one of them hit me across the face and I fell. I think I got kicked in the ribs. I remember seeing a man grab Avery by the hair. They were trying to get to me, but I was bleeding. There was red everywhere. We were separated by the time I woke up again, and I don't know what happened to Avery. I never saw them again. They weren't an Esper. I just hope they're okay. I was never in a position to look for them. I don't know how I'd even start. And it was already 3 years ago.
His voice had gone shaky and hoarse again, and all I could do was stand in the kitchen saying sorry and making a cup of tea as if it had any power to help. But it didn't help at all. It couldn't undo any of that. Damn it. This was why we needed places like Nysa. Being violently attacked wasn't a fate anyone should have to endure just for being an Esper. 3 years. That might be difficult, but I would still talk to Quill about it. It might not be possible to find anything, especially not good news. But for closure, maybe we could check. Maybe his person on the outside could help. That's what I was wondering about. You said you were targeted because you're an Esper.
I was not very good at using Psi. I learned about it in my teens, so I didn't go to their academy properly. Just a few years of remote training on the outside. Endgame allowed me to register and avoid recruitment that way. I didn't think it was enough to attract anyone's attention. I didn't realize it could be dangerous for someone like me to walk around in Pythia.
I returned to the sofa, 2 teacups in hand. Linden and green, one Quill liked, and I found soothing. I sat next to Rory, resting my cup on my knee until it started to burn. Neither of us spoke for a while.
After the attack, I was taken to a lab. I was there when I woke up. And they...
He choked up again, a soft groan escaping. Not this one. I think we should reiterate it. He's told us so much. Like, he's just woke up, basically. We had to wait quite a while when we were on Jack's route for him to tell us even, like, a fraction of this. The fact he's, like, this open about it already is like, whoa. So, let's just give him the support. Again, you don't have to talk about this right now. You've given me a lot already. We at least had the safety and the knowledge that it's a special ability of his, and that's how he was able to find her. So the odds of someone else replicating that is very small. Rory, you don't have to talk about it right now if it's too hard. I never intended to interrogate you. We needed to know some of this, but no one wanted to force this poor man to relive everything he'd gone through.
No, I think I want to share it. I think I need to. I want someone to know.
Then take your time. And it's okay if you need a break or want to stop.
Thank you for letting me talk to you. For being understanding.
That isn't something you have to thank me for, Rory. The truth is, I never registered as an Esper. I was always afraid to. I know some people register when they're older, and, like you, they do remote training and get to stay out of Endgame. But I also know some people register and get pulled in. That uncertainty was always terrifying for me. I thought I was a low-level infantry, but I was so certain I'd be forced to join. But they found me anyway, and it turns out my rank was higher than I expected. I'm sure that, to them, I was just a rogue Esper, someone who hid the truth, never received any training, and was a danger to the public. Maybe a danger to myself, too. I know that, but I'm still angry. Or I wanted to be angry. Even now, the rage I'd felt at first was fading. It was too hard to hold on to it the further I got from those events, because I could at least see how I must look from Endgame's point of view, even if I'd never agree with or accept their actions. Because staying angry didn't change anything. Rory's situation, though, was different. There was no point of view that could ever justify the violence and pain he endured. That day was so frightening for me. It felt like everything I had been aiming for slipped away, but more than that, there were moments I didn't think I would survive. It's not the same as what happened to you, but I can sympathize a little, I think. And listening to your story is the least I can do.
I'm glad. Thank you. I don't know why you need to know about that lab, but I'm not sure I can tell you much about it or who is behind it. we didn't get much information. Me and the others who were there. I don't want to call them doctors. The people there did nothing but ask questions. I know there were other people like me because I saw them in the halls or past their rooms. At first, we were never allowed to interact. I knew they were doing experiments with Psy because of the tests they had me do. They gave me medications through an IV, and my entire body felt like it was on fire. I thought I was dying. My head was hurting so much, but I didn't die. It was after that they started testing my Psy even more, and I realized my abilities had increased.
The medications must have been the Arensol.
At some point, they started testing our abilities against each other, like trying to train soldiers. So we sometimes could eat in a communal area during breaks. Sometimes people would stop showing up there. Maybe they were released or transferred. I always hoped that's what it was because it meant maybe I would be released too. But sometimes at night I'd hear screams. Being there felt like we were all just waiting to die.
How did you get out? Is it okay to ask? Are you gonna tell her you saw her? From another reality? He looked at me, licking his lips, his shoulders going tense again. I caught the slight tremble in his hands as he gripped his teacup tighter.
There was a person there.
Okay, we're gonna learn about Brennan.
He was different from the rest of us. Stronger. Much stronger. I think he was a queen rank. Like you. No, not like you. I overheard conversations about him sometimes. I think he was born there, in the lab. I don't know what happened or how he got free. There was an accident of some kind. The lab lost power, and in the split second between that and when auxiliary generators came on, he broke free. All their controls, all their inhibitors. He broke through them all in that amount of time. He did something to us, to the rest of us. He freed us, but he also invaded our minds, took control of us.
Mind control? Trent used to always say it was impossible. But in a lab, it might just be another of their experiments. After all, even Rory had abnormal abilities. I couldn't believe there were labs working on things like that. So a single person took over the minds of everyone there?
Not everyone. I think it was too much for him. Some of us weren't as deep under his control as others. Some of us broke free. Or partially broke free, like I did. I didn't feel completely free from him until after that day when you somehow reached into me and broke his link.
I did that? I hadn't meant to do anything of the sort, but I recalled that day when I'd reached out to Rory, I'd felt something snap. That must have been it. I was using a lot of unconscious ability that day. Maybe I'd just done it on instinct, given how my abilities surged out of control right afterwards. Maybe I'd had an instinctive reaction to foreign psi? Rory shut his eyes, letting out a shaky breath, drawing my attention back to him.
He was interested in you.
This other queen rank? Why? Wait. Is that what happened? When I saw you in the vivarium, you seemed different from the day before. Is that why? Did he somehow take control back?
Because the link was never broken, just weakened. Everywhere I went after I left the lab, I felt him watching. From a distance. I could feel his his eyes, hear his voice. And everything else was like a fog by comparison. It was as if what he wanted overlapped with what I was doing. I barely knew where I was or what was happening around me. I'm not even sure how I got back to New Albion. And then after I met you that day in Cisalis, it was like he took notice of me again. His goals became sharper, and I started losing myself. I don't remember much of what happened after that. I think he was trying to establish a permanent link. But you somehow...
His voice was getting faster, breathing coming in heavy gasps, as if he was reliving that terrible day. I finally reached over to take his face in my hands and make him look at me. It's okay, Rory. It's okay. You're here. Now. In Nysa with me. And it's just the two of us. Look at me, Rory. His eyes had gone so far away, looking so far beyond me. But as I watched, he focused on me again, my face. Let's not talk about this anymore.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
You don't have to apologize at all. Nothing that happened was your fault. Whether it was what the lab did to you or what this other Esper did. And again, I wrapped my arms around his thin body, hoping the contact would help soothe him a little. At least help him remember he wasn't alone anymore. I hated watching him relive that. I hated everything about this situation. I hated that I was relieved by all the things he'd cleared up, despite how hard it obviously was for him to talk about it. There had been two distinct situations at play with Rory. The Arensol experiments that enhanced his abilities, and the lab behind them were only one part of the story. There was also this other Esper, this queen rank, and that had been the direct cause of his unusual behavior in New Albion. It added a lot of clarity to what had happened. It was unfair. Even this queen rank who had tried to manipulate him was a victim as well. Damn, she's already on like, Brennan was a victim in this. Dang, girl. I could only guess at what he was hoping to accomplish by gathering Espers to him. Maybe he just wanted to make sure nothing terrible ever happened to him again. Maybe he also felt alone. Every time I read things like this, I'm like, I wish there was a Brennan route. Just low-key, like, oh man, the possibilities are so tantalizing. Don't tease me like that, Morgan. Good grief. Even if I hated what Rory had gone through, I could understand that queen's desperation a little. By contrast, I was so fortunate. Fortunate it was Endgame who approached me and not some horrible faction that wanted to experiment on me. Fortunate I was a queen rank and had escaped. Fortunate to end up here in Nysa on my own. Fortunate to find Quill. I decided to leave things there with Rory. He shouldn't have to talk about this anymore. So we sat in silence with his head buried against my shoulder like a child. Aw, poor Rory. I replayed his story in my mind, wondering if there was a way to uncover who did this to him. We had so little information to work with. Pythia. It would have to be a large faction with sway there. I wondered about the day they escaped the lab. It sounded like it had been dramatic. Maybe that was another clue. How would anyone have learned Rory was an Esper, though? As I thought about that, I heard the front door open, and from my location, I saw Quill poke his head into the kitchen. He paused when he saw me cradling Rory against me, muffled sniffles coming from him because he was crying again. I tilted my head, indicating I thought it was okay for him to enter. He did so quietly, followed by Vale. Rory tensed as they came in, and a moment later, he sat up, reaching for the damp towel I'd brought him earlier. You okay?
I will be. I eventually will be.
Eventually. I hated how much we had to cling to that word. There was an awkward moment where no one spoke, and then Rory excused himself to the bathroom. Quill stopped him on his way out of the room to suggest he have lunch with us because we were ordering takeaway. Rory gave him a faint smile and agreed. For the first time, he seemed a little less afraid. In a hushed voice, I assured Quill and Vale that everything was okay. We had talked a lot, and it had been difficult. I didn't want to rehash it all with Rory there, so I silently indicated we'd talk about it later. While I'd been with Rory, they'd been having a conversation with Locke, though Vale said they'd be in the nearby common area if I needed them. He updated me on some of what they talked about. It was almost a moot point now that I talked to Rory, but Aerith and Neil had located the place where Rory entered the city. He'd slipped in on board a small freight truck, it seemed, then wandered around the streets for 2 days. They found him on several recordings. It was amazing to me they'd gone through so much footage and found him. Neil was amazing. Everything else depended on what I'd learned from Rory, so we'd have to talk about it more later. Rory returned before they could share more, and we talked about other things while Quill went to pick up our lunch. Vale shared the story of how they arrived in the city, something that left them with a silver streak in their hair, too. We were able to have a little laugh over our shared experiences. A sad, painful laugh. Then Vale wanted me to demonstrate the teleportation skill I had picked up from Ari, even though I hadn't tried it even once since then, because all the talk about it made them curious. And then it made me curious if I could recreate it. Quill came back to the three of us on the terrace with me trying to figure out how to teleport across it without launching myself into the wall face first. He was not amused. Rory and Vale only left when Vale insisted he needed to get some rest. I assured him I was only 2 floors up if he needed anything. He seemed a little better when they left. Lighter. But I knew it would be a much, much longer journey of healing for him. Much longer. But maybe today had been the start of it? I hope so.
I'm surprised he opened up. I know we were hoping he'd be more comfortable with you, but he's been so skittish I wasn't sure.
I think he'll be better with Vale now, too. He seemed better when they left anyway.
It was pretty astonishing to have an actual conversation with him. I was worried when I saw the state he was in.
He's been through so much. It was like listening to a cautionary tale of what could have happened to me.
A lab somewhere in Delphine.
I was thinking about how Rory said they knew he was an Esper. It would have been on his travel records, but some random group wouldn't have had access to those.
No, a random group certainly wouldn't. A random group most likely wouldn't have had access to Arcalis either, though. I mean, if you're going to leak it to someone over there, you want it to be someone who can pay for it.
I would be very curious to know how many Espers travel to Pythia from the day side and actually make it back.
Maybe that's something Rob can help with. I'm sure he'll find all the information we gathered useful.
I was hoping he might be able to look into Rory's case. If we could find anything about his partner, even if it's not good news.
I'll have Rob do some searching. What about Rory's family?
He didn't mention anything about it. He said he was in sort of a mental haze after leaving the lab, so he might not have thought to contact any relatives. Or he may not have any. We should ask about that too at some point.
I'm also a little concerned about this queen rank that can control other people. I don't like that.
I don't either. But whoever they are, they're probably a victim of our Arcalis experiments as well. The reality is they're the reason we may have a trail of breadcrumbs, to use your phrase, back to that lab. If we can locate them or other people like Rory who escaped their control, it could be quite helpful.
That's a good point. It's a pretty big search to find people with those symptoms, but it's still something.
But I didn't like the idea of that person either. A queen rank with an ability like that. And what if that wasn't some Arcalis abnormality? Is that why people were so keen to get our hands on people like us? Wherever they were now, I hoped it was better than that awful lab. They seemed dangerous, but my heart also broke for them. No one should have to endure that. I'm just glad Rory's out of there, that he'll have the chance to recover.
It may take years for him to find some sense of normalcy, and we need to find someone else he can talk to. Someone we can trust with what they may learn from talking to him.
It may take years, but the ones who didn't make it out don't even get that much. I know Nysa is not some utopia, and there are bound to be jerks here. but it's so crystal clear to me how necessary this place is, how much it needs to be protected. And I took his hands and squeezed them, realizing how cold mine were only when the warmth of his enveloped them. Talking to Rory made me realize how much worse things could have been for me, and that just makes me all the more grateful I ended up here, with you. You've done so much for me.
Don't act like I'm a saint, Morgan.
He stepped a little closer to me, keeping a tight grip on my hands. Oh, I know you aren't a saint, but you are a good person.
And if I've been overtaken by selfish reasons for being glad you're here, am I still a good person?
Heat was warming my face at his sudden proximity, at the gentle way his hands held mine, at that truly unfair smile on his face. Well, it's okay to be a little selfish, sometimes.
Good. Because I'd like to keep being selfish in this regard. Whatever else is true about the way we met, why it happened, and all the baggage behind it, I'm not sorry you ended up here. I didn't expect to get attached, but I have.
To me?
Who else would I be talking about exactly?
No, I mean... Aw, look at these guys! They're just like holding hands so sweetly, staring into each other's eyes. It's so freaking cute! Ah, the wholesomeness. I hadn't expected the conversation to take this turn. I looked away, resisting an intense urge to step closer and wrap my arms around him, seeking reassurance from... I didn't even know what. Quill slid his fingers under my chin, making me look up at him. My face warmed pleasantly at the sensation of his thumb sliding just under my lower lip.
I do hope you want to stay with me as much as I want you to stay.
Ah, that's...
Are you saying you're interested in me right now? Is that where we're going? Doy.
Don't ruin the moment, Morgan. Just say yes. Of course I want to stay with you. I didn't expect to get attached either, but... well, maybe I've just become too comfortable. Maybe you've made it too easy. I keep worrying about getting too dependent on you, or being too clingy, but I really just want to get to know you more. Not because you've helped me. I don't want you to think it's only that. I will always be amazed by how kind you are, but I enjoy a lot more than that about you.
Oh, I'm curious what it is you enjoy about me.
Your obnoxious sense of humor, for one.
I'm sorry, was that a compliment?
Your kindness. Your passion for doing the right thing. I just like spending time with you. I'm not sure I can put it into words. Sometimes you just like something, right?
Yes. Sometimes you just like something. Or want something.
Quill's eyes dropped to my lips as he leaned in before meeting my gaze once more. Yay! It's time! Woohoo! That was super duper sweet. Good lord. I love it. I love it. I wasn't expecting it until that moment, but I still leaned into him until his lips touched mine, soft and gentle. Both of his hands shifted to cup my cheeks as he closed the short distance between our bodies. Quill pulled away slightly to meet my eyes before we both moved toward one another again without hesitation. Somehow I was surprised, but also not. I knew what I'd begun to feel, the little flutter that accompanied me sometimes when he was with me. I suppose I just hadn't expected him to act on it like this. But I should have. Since when was he anything but distressingly honest? I should probably be more surprised he'd said something instead of assuming I knew how he felt. True. I was smiling a little when he pulled away again, letting his head rest against mine for a bit. What was that for?
Well, I've been thinking about it an annoying amount the last couple of days. I suppose I wanted to make sure my intent is clear, since apparently I'm not good at words.
Here we go.
And I wanted to get it out of the way so we don't have to worry about it.
How very practical of you. He's nothing if not practical. He shrugged and grinned, then leaned in to press another feather-light kiss to my lips before he pulled away.
Some people enjoy all that buildup of tension, but I don't. I like having that sort of thing out in the open. And now it is.
I let out a soft laugh, this time letting myself just enjoy the fluttering in my stomach those words caused. That was so very like him, and I was so very grateful for the comfort his presence brought after the emotional turmoil of the last few days. It's true. So do we just keep doing what we've been doing and see where things go next?
I think that's the way it usually works. Unless humans have some bizarre courtship rituals I don't know about. In which case, enlighten me, because my books have been getting it wrong.
No, you've got a pretty good understanding of it. We started walking again, but this time Quill kept hold of my hand, and I was very, very conscious of it as he finally turned back to his place. Comfortable silence fell over us as we both lost ourselves in our thoughts. I couldn't know what was going on in Quill's head, but as we passed through the city, I couldn't help but think about my conversation with Rory. The desperate fragility of Nysa and the overwhelming need for such a place. It worried me. But beyond that, I had an even bigger reason to want to keep this place safe now. To make sure Nysa stayed the haven that it was. Quill's contact on the outside would probably have to handle some of the further research into Rory's story. Quill had told me how on the inside we had to be careful with the investigation. He hadn't found a trustworthy contact inside the Arnsal research teams yet. Everything was so close-knit, he was worried about suddenly showing interest in alerting someone he was investigating. Maybe it would be easier if we at least had someone trustworthy at the Research Institute, even if they weren't on that specific team. It would be months before I could be that person. But if we had no answers by the time my residency was secure, then maybe... Ugh, I was no secret agent, but... I couldn't lose this. I couldn't lose what this place had given me. Whatever I had to do to protect it, I would do it. That much I was certain of.